Okay, this tutorial will be about drawing hair, specifically shorter, straight hair. So I made a copy of my portrait in progress so that I can do all these different hairstyles. So starting out, the steps are always the same for hair, even though different hairstyles are going to be vastly different. So we're going to do shape, form, and including value, and we're going to finally add the texture at the end. So what not to do is just kind of get in there and start just kind of doing strands of hair. All right, so first thing we're usually going to start with is kind of the line around the face, so the hairline. So in this case, this person has bangs. So we're going to start over here by the ears. So the hair may cover the ears. So if I were drawing this person, I would have, instead of drawing this top part of the ear, or now I would do this over, I'm going to draw this shape over the ear and then come up to the side of the head and up like so, and then over, and this is the general shape, something like this, and then down in front and over like so. We're not going to leave this though as just a line. We do need to make that have some texture. So we're going to go back into that. So I did this as a really light line so that that doesn't stick. I want to add this texture to it. So maybe zooming in a little bit here, and I'll zoom in here too so you can see what I'm doing. Don't know what that square is. Okay, so instead of just doing this as a hard line, I'm doing these little lines to indicate the texture of the hair. Now you won't see that everywhere. So here, for example, the way the hair comes behind the head, you're just seeing this kind of smooth line of the face. So pay attention and look and see, where do you see that texture line and where don't you? So we've got this kind of coming down in front as bangs. We can go back in and kind of make this more finished and specific later, but for now you at least want to get this started. And then over here it looks like this is kind of coming across in front of the face a little bit, and then again kind of disappearing behind the side of the face there. All right, so that's our first line, and now we're going to do this outside of the hair. First thing you want to notice is that this is going to pop up above the skull. So I think this is where my skull was. It's kind of hard to see in the photocopy. So we want to make sure that the hair goes above that. I'm gonna check that that's, yeah, I think that's where my skull was. Okay, so we want to go above that. So I often will start at a part if I see a part, so something like this. And here, again, notice how I'm making this kind of an uneven line. So it's not as textured as it was here, but it's still going to have some texture. Oh my goodness. This just doesn't want to cooperate here. So up here we still have some texture. And then keep going over to the other side. And if it's looking a little asymmetrical, you may want to go in and make it more symmetrical. Here, as we saw before, it comes over the ear, maybe something like that. So if it's doing this over here, I might decide either I won't do that or I'll make it match over on that side a little more. It'll just look a little more pleasing in the photo, if it's supposed to be a symmetrical hairstyle, I should say. All right, so we've got the shape. Next, we are going to erase the skull. And now we're going to start shading. We're thinking about the form, so we're going to start that by shading. So areas that are going back in space, we'll make these a little darker. We'll make it a little darker here around the edges a lot of times. There'll be, the hair is falling over the head, or even making like a ridge and a little darker in front. And we'll sort of keep the center of forms a little bit lighter. So I'm going to try this with my thicker tool here. So as you're shading, you might already be thinking about the direction the hair is growing. But I'm basically shading around the edges. So again, I'm already thinking about the direction the hair is growing. Another thing we have going on here with form, and that we often have, so we talked about this space kind of going back. We often have usually this front section a little bit separate from this area here beside the head. So we can also create a little bit of a distinction there. So maybe here and here, something like that. And then what's behind there might be a little darker as well. So at this point, I often will blend a little. I'm going to do this a little bit with my pencil too, because you can do this either way. And I am going to go in with a little bit of a darker pencil. Yeah. So if I were shading with just my pencil, I might be doing this. So this is just coming straight from the back of the head here and coming straight down. So you can be thinking about the texture, but we're thinking about the bigger forms. We're not going to just have these strands of hair. All right, so it's nice to be able to get a lot done pretty quickly. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to make this even a little darker since this person does have very dark hair. So even these areas in the center where it gets lighter, we still want those to be shaded in. And so we'll go darker in the areas we want to be really dark. Okay, so I'll often at this point blend a little bit. So this kind of gives you a base to work on. And don't worry too much if we went over some of those edges. We'll get a chance to pull them back out. So, but notice even as I'm blending, even as I was doing that shading, I'm kind of thinking about the direction the hair is growing. And then on top of that, I'm going to go ahead and start to add in the strands. So again, we can see the direction the hair is growing. It might be coming right out at you. And I'm going to focus on adding this texture in the areas where I want it to be darker. So around the top, I'm just going to pause a second. I had to pause to get my paper towel. That was driving me crazy that I was going to be smudging this with my hand. It's a bad example. Okay, so, and you can see this will continue right through the center, but I might make that less strands there because I want it to be lighter. If you want to show more texture there, but not make it darker, you can also add strands and texture with your eraser. So here you can see how this front section of the bangs is coming in front of this back part. So if you want that to be popping forward, then you want that to be a little bit lighter, and you go around that to make the space around it and behind it appear to be going back. And again, wherever the hair is ending, I often will have these little kind of feathery lines for the texture. And I am making it a little more textured over here just to match the other side where it was a little more textured. So again, and you may see here it's going one direction, here it's going slightly the other direction. So it's coming straight at you, and it's kind of spreading out over those orthogonal lines. And see how we've got this smoothness, you can actually follow these strands. So you may at some points too want to have these chunks of hair. So if you want a larger lock of hair to pop forward a little bit, I would sketch that in. And again, I would shade darker around that to have that part pop out more. And you really want to just be looking the whole time. So there's not really just sort of one secret way to do this. If you try to kind of have it all fit the same formula, it'll tend to look less realistic because, like so many things in nature, it's not going to be perfect. But again, you can kind of modify things a little bit. So if your hair was a little out of place, you can modify it to make it kind of look a little neater, as if you had just combed it. All right, so kind of having this section pop out a little bit. With dark hair, it could be a little tricky because you don't always see some of these forms because everything will just blend into dark, but I know I saw this over here. And because I've drawn hair a lot, I kind of know that's what to expect as well. So this is kind of coming under, and again, this is coming over the ear here, and then where it ends. I'm ending with these textured lines. So I might have a few other places where I might see these strands pop forward, so these kind of chunks of hair, and again, I can draw those in like so. I can go darker behind those areas. And see, at those strands, I still need to keep it textured though. So anywhere that's popping forward, you can make it a little bit lighter. And then we'll often see a little bit, it's a little darker, again, along sort of the perimeter of the hair. So against the face, against the head, as well as toward the back. So just like we've drawn all of these curving forms. And it's straight, but it does curve a little bit around the head, and you'll often give your straight hair just a little bit of a curve to add movement to make it feel like it is hair. So I can blend a little bit more again to kind of make some areas kind of appear darker, and then I might just go back and add a little bit more texture over that. And again, I can do that too with my eraser as well. So lines, lines, lines. But all these lines, they're not just at random kind of going all different directions. They're all sort of following these forms. The other thing too about bangs is, and I'm going to even these up a little bit, I kind of drew them maybe just a little crooked here. Let's make sure they're a little more even. So the other thing too is that you may see it's a little shaded under the bangs. So that's another thing I would do, is maybe add a little bit of shading there. And we talked about that in the earlier video, but you might have to go back and add shading where the hair falls in front of the face. All right, so that's basically it. I could keep messing with that a bit, but that's the general idea. So yeah, something like that. And I could keep messing with that and, you know, kind of tweaking it to maybe it should have been a little fuller. I'm feeling like the basic shape I could have gotten a little bit better, a little bit fuller. So, but again, that's the basic idea, and what can I say? Drawing always involves some revisions. So sit back, look at your progress, and check your work as you go.